Perfect.
All right, everybody, what's going on? How y'all doing? Welcome to today's edition of SWAC Talk. This is a show we cover the SWAC inside and out, and I'm your tour guide around the SWAC. C. Wells coming at you, and it's week 8. We are more than halfway through the month of October. We some of these division races are heating up. Some of them are almost coming to a close, but we are in week 8, and we have SWAC action. 4 games on the schedule, all conference games. My game of the week is Florida A&M at Texas Southern. So we're going to talk about all these games coming up and just see what's going on. But before we do that, make sure you check out the socials. Facebook is SWAC Talk, Instagram SWAC Talk, Twitter SWAC Talk 76. Got the weekly show schedule on there. We got SWAC Smoke coming tomorrow, live 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Eastern. We're going to recap week 8 on Sunday. And then Tuesday is our HBCU top 10 and point spread show, and then Wednesday we'll preview week 9. So we're gonna keep this thing rolling. You can find all that on the socials. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, like the video, share it, hit that join button if you would like to become a member, and if you would like to just donate to the show and not become a member, then you can go to the Cash App $SWAC Talk and donate there. Other than that, man, let's go ahead and get into this. We're not going to waste any time. The first game we're going to talk about is Jackson State taking on Mississippi Valley. And in an odd switch, Valley's coming in off a win this week. Jackson State's coming in off of a loss. Usually Valley the one coming in off of a loss, but Valley played really well in their game against Pine Bluff on Saturday, winning that game 42-17 on homecoming. JSU comes in off a 24-19 loss to Alabama State. Valley still has some things to work out. I mean, they won a game against a team that is probably, just as bad as they are, but they were able to win the game convincingly. And we're going to talk about the Devils in a minute. Jackson State comes into this game averaging 27 points per game. They're giving up 28, so they have, given up some points in some games, and for the most part, they've been able to put points on the board. But this team has really been strong running the ball, averaging 170 yards per game, 4.4 yards per carry. Passing game, 224 through the air, 11 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Total offense, 395 per game. They're averaging 5.6 yards per play. They're giving up 158 yards on the ground, 4.9 yards per carry. And they're giving up 194 yards through the air, 11 touchdowns with 10 interceptions, giving the opponents a total offense of 353 per game with a 5.7 yard per play average. Jackson State is 34% on third down, so that's been part of their issue is converting third downs. They are 71% on fourth down. They fumbled the ball 6 times that they lost. They fumbled 11, lost 6, giving them a total of 8 turnovers. The opponents have fumbled 8 times and lost 4, giving them a total of 14 turnovers. So they're +6 in the turnover margin. So for most part, they win the turnover battle. They've come up short in a couple games, but for the most part, they come out ahead in turnovers, which can always help you when your offense is kind of not really clicking at all cylinders. The defense has 12 sacks. They've given up 18, kind of struggling a bit to protect the quarterback, but they've been up and down in that aspect. 17 of 25 in the red zone with 13 touchdowns. The opponents are 22 of 29 in the red zone with 21 touchdowns. Individually, one of the things to look out for is Irv Mulligan went down with an injury against Bama State on Saturday. So how his availability is definitely going to be a key factor in this game. He's averaging 5.6 yards per carry and 95 yards per game. So that's a big chunk of yardage that you're going to lose if he doesn't play. 668 total yards rushing for him and 5 touchdowns. So that's a big portion of your offense that may be out. He may not be out. I think it's an ankle sprain. So depending on how he responds to that, he may play, he may not. I'm not sure. That kind of news can come later. Ahmad Miller is the next guy up in terms of yardage with 175 yards, 6.5 yards per carry with 1 touchdown. Also, Desmond Moultrie, who filled in for Mulligan on Saturday, he has 133 yards on 25 carries, 5.3 yards per carry with 2 touchdowns. So the running game, which is what Jackson State leans on, if they have to do it by committee, they do have enough guys that can do it. But you miss a guy like Irv Mulligan who can be a guy that can kind of get the tough yardage, keep his legs moving, keep grinding, keep spinning and turning, and turn a 3-yard gain to a 10-yard gain. Guys are going to have to kind of fill that spot if he doesn't play. I don't really think that's a big factor in this game, but strange things do happen at Valley. Jason Brown is 125 of 196 passing for 63%, 1,357 yards and 8 touchdowns with 2 interceptions. Right now there's some question if he should continue at quarterback, or if you give somebody else an opportunity. But he has been able to move the offense. He's had some consistency issues, but for the most part, hasn't really turned the ball over. Hadn't just not really spectacular, I guess you can say. One of the reasons why a lot of people may not be that high on him. Rico Powers has 25 catches for 385 yards with a 15-yard average with 2 touchdowns. Fabian McCray, 18 catches, 249 yards and 1 touchdown. And also Duke Miller, 22 catches for 211 yards and 9.5-yard average with no touchdowns. Isaac Peppers leads the defense with 41 tackles. He also has 6 tackles for loss. That also leads the defense. And Antonio Doyle has 2.5 sacks. And they have 4 guys with 2 interceptions. So they've been ball hawking, and they haven't been spectacular as a defense, but they've been able to make some plays here and there. And they forced 2 turnovers against Bama State, and actually held Bama State to under 250 yards, I believe. But they just offense for Bama State got short fields and were able to convert. Jackson State wasn't able to move the ball consistently, and that hurt them in this game. The kicking game has been kind of up and down, depending on which game that you saw them play in. They've had their issues. It seems to be the ship seems to be righting, but it's still a little rough right now. When you look at the punt game, Matt Knoll returned from injury, so he is their punter, and he came back from an injury to continue that job. Looking at his numbers on the season, he is averaging 44.5 yards per punt. So really solid in the punt game there. Dylan Watson has taken over the kicking duties. He's 3 of 3 on field goals with a long of 46. He had a 45 and a 46-yarder. So he's been pretty solid as a team. That's 7 of 9 on field goals. The return game hadn't really had a lot of big returns. Isaiah Spencer does average 33 yards per return. He has 3 returns for 101 yards. Rico Powers has 11 returns for 201 yards with a long of 29. Seven McGee has 3 punt returns for 50 yards with a long of 25. Switching over to Valley, the Delta Devils come into this game. Like I said, they come in off of a win, and for Valley, that's always a good thing. You want to get some positivity. It's been a rough season for them, and they were able to put up a lot of points. They put up 42 points in this game. That's almost half of that's almost the same amount of points that they've scored in all their other games. They have 92 points, so they scored 50 points in their other 5 games and 42 in one game alone. So they were able to really right the ship for a good bit and have some positivity come out of it. They averaging 15 points per game. They're giving up 30. The run game is at 97 yards per game, averaging 2.7 yards per carry. Passing game, 153 yards per game, 6 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Total offense, 251 yards of offense, 3.8 yard per play. The opponents average 171 yards on the ground and 251 through the air. Opponents average 5.2 yards per carry, and they have 15 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. Opponents 422 yards of offense on 6.6 yard per play average. Valley's at 27% on third down, so really third downs have really hurt them a lot. Being able to extend drives is really hurting them. They're 40% on fourth down. They fumbled the ball 8 times and lost 3, giving them a total of 5 turnovers. The opponents have fumbled the ball 6 times and lost 3, giving them 7 turnovers. So Valley's +2 in that aspect. So that's definitely something to hang your hat on. But they're giving up 40% on third downs as a defense. Valley has 9 sacks. They're giving up 22. This, with a new team like this, and guys new all over. Of course, you're gonna have issues with the offensive line. That's a unit that takes time to gel together, and they haven't really been able to make that happen. Valley's 11 of 14 in the red zone with 9 touchdowns. The opponents are 22 of 28 in the red zone with 15 touchdowns. Jared Wilson leads the running game with 76 carries for 281 yards, 2 touchdowns, averages 3.7 yard per carry. Tijerian Williams has come on strong in the last couple of games. I believe he's going to be the quarterback moving forward. He's a young guy, freshman. He's 60 of 97 for 61%, 649 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions with a long of 75. I think he's going to take that job from this point on. So I like that they put a young guy out there. They gave him an opportunity, and he's taking advantage of it. He was a National Freshman of the Week this week off of his Pine Bluff efforts. So you'd like to see that from Valley. You don't want to see those positive bursts and guys playing hard and guys making plays, building for next year. I mean, you're 1-5, so there's not a lot left in this season other than to try to stack a few wins and play well in the rest of your game. So you're seeing guys start to kind of make plays. You're starting to see playmakers come around. It's been rough, but they're steady fighting and staying with it. Kobe Bates has 14 catches for 169 yards, averages 12 yards per catch with no touchdowns. Carrick Ross, 15 catches, 155 yards, averages 10.4 yards per catch with 2 touchdowns. And Jackson Davis has 17 catches with 141 yards, 8.2 yard average, and 2 touchdowns. Valley has spread the ball around pretty evenly around a lot of their guys. I mean, they have 5 guys with double-digit catches, 2 more guys with 8 catches. So they really spread the ball around, even with the offense not being as explosive. They are sharing the wealth, and guys are all developing and becoming playmakers together. Jaron Fox has 39 tackles to lead the defense. He also leads the defense with 4.5 tackles for loss. And Ryan Quinney has 2.5 sacks to lead the defense. Omar Emons leads the defense with 2 interceptions. Alexander Davis averaging 35 yards per punt on the season. And Valley's 3 of 6 on field goals. Anthony Turnage is 3 of 5 with a long of 44. He's 1 of 1 from 20 to 29 yards, 1 of 3 from 30 to 39 yards, and 1 of 1 from 40 plus. So they've been able to get some points out of the kicking game. The return game hasn't really exploded yet. A guy like Kobe Bates can definitely be that guy. He was a really solid return man last season, so he hasn't really burst loose yet. But they do have a 60-yard return from Kobe Chambers on kick returns. They're only averaging 7.3 yards per punt return, so not a lot there yet. But Valley will have those opportunities moving forward. This is a simple game to me. If Jackson State puts last week behind them and comes out and is able to run the ball and set up the passing game, they should be fine. I mean, Valley's defense is not spectacular, but they are They are scrappy, but they will fold because they don't have the depth. But the offense seems to be finding a bit of a rhythm. If they can continue to develop and not make a lot of mistakes, that can help them in a game like this. But I think Jackson State wins this game strictly because they'll be able to run the ball, and I think they defense is not pretty, but I think they have the better units all the way around. So I think Jackson State wins this game by a score of 28-10. I think Valley's going to keep it close for a while because that's what they do. They always play Jackson State hard in Itabena. I don't think that's going to change, but I think JSU will score a couple late touchdowns to put this game away. Next game is Alcorn at Pine Bluff, and that's homecoming in Pine Bluff. They continue their trend of playing tough opponents at home for homecoming. Both teams come in, looking to continue to kind of move up the West Division standings. Pine Bluff's coming off of that loss to Valley. Alcorn's coming off of an open date. This is the HBCU Go game for Saturday, so make sure you check that out. Alcorn has been a up and down team. They haven't been pretty offensively. They're still kind of trying to find their stride with the run game, but they've won close games. They haven't really scored a lot of points, averaging 18 points per game. They're giving up 24. They've only run the ball for 118 yards per game with a 3.7 average. So when you look at a team like Alcorn, who has been a solid running team the last few years, and last season was a really good running team with probably one of the best running backs in the league, those numbers are really surprising. I've heard that the play calling has kind of changed a little bit. They ran the ball 191 times on the season. They've had some games where they've thrown the ball more than they've run it, even if they're not behind. And that's something that I don't really think is a cause for concern, because I think as long as they keep with it, those guys they have that breakout game. I mean, the season is starting to hit the midpoint, but they should be able to start to run the ball. They haven't really had a lot of success, but I look for them to have a breakout at some point. A game like this could definitely be that game. They are passing for 202 yards per game with 7 touchdowns and 4 interceptions, averaging 320 total offense, 5.3 yards per play. The opponents are running for 157 yards per game with a 4.3 yard average, 198 yards passing for the opponents, 6 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. This defense is very, very aggressive. They are turnover hunters. Like GSPN say, they got the crackhead D. Everybody get to the rock, and they definitely do it. They turn you over a lot, and this defense has been getting better week by week. They're playing more like the defense that I expected them to play. The play as giving up 5.7 yards per play and 356 yards per game. Alcorn 37% on third down, 50% on fourth down. They've only fumbled 4 times and lost 2, giving them 6 turnovers. The opponents have fumbled the ball 10 times and lost 4, giving them 14 turnovers. Alcorn is huge in the turnover margin, +8. The opponents are converting 41% on third down and 83% on fourth down. So it's getting off the field has been a bit of a struggle, but those numbers are starting to kind of change as you get into conference play. They have 12 sacks and they've given up 13. They are 13 or 15 in the red zone with 8 touchdowns. The opponent's 20 or 25 in the red zone with 13 touchdowns. Individually in the running game, you know the names: Jarvion Howard, Nico Duffy, Javante Leatherwood. They have a lot of backs that can carry the ball. They just haven't really got the big play yet. Minus a 75-yard run by Tyler Macon, the longest run by the running backs this season is 22 yards. So they haven't had those explosive runs this season, and that's part of the issue. Not being able to break big plays on the ground, and just not really consistently running the ball well. It has been holding them back. Jarvion Howard averages 3.7 yards per carry, 276 yards with 3 touchdowns. Nico Duffy, 157 yards, 4.2 yards per carry with 1 touchdown. Aaron Allen has been really, really good these last few weeks. He's 108 of 157 with 7 touchdowns and 2 interceptions, completing 68% of his passes with 1,181 yards. He's playing almost like he was last season before he hit that rough stretch in the middle of the season, and then he got injured. He's a solid quarterback, and he's playing really, really well the last couple of weeks, and I think that's going to continue. Malik Rogers has 16 catches for 326 yards, averaging 20 yards per catch with one touchdown. Montario Hunt, 20 catches for 298 yards, 14 yards per catch, and a touchdown. Tavares Griffin, use your tight ends, man. I say it every week. Use your tight ends. He has 19 catches for 186 yards and 3 touchdowns. Defensively, Terrence Ellis leads the team with 60 tackles. Uh, Edwards has 5.5 tackles for loss, and Malachi Bailey has 2.5 sacks to lead the defense. And just like last year, Alcorn has multiple guys that can get to the quarterback, so they don't necessarily have the one guy with 4 or 5 sacks and then everybody else with like 1 or a half a sack. They have a lot of guys, with 1 sack here, 2.5 here, so they've been that way last season. They still are that way. McKelton and McDaniel both have 2 interceptions to lead the defense. The special teams have been pretty solid. They're averaging 36 yards per punt as a team. Noah Kiani is 7 of 10 on field goals, including an overtime winner against Bama State. He's 1 or 2 from 20 to 29 yards, 5 or 6 from 30 to 39 yards, 1 of 2 from 40 plus with a long of 42. And the return game has not really flourished yet. They're only averaging 14 yards per kick return, and they haven't been able to get anything on the punt return side. So Alcorn, this could be a good game for them to come out against a Pine Bluff team that's kind of reeling now. They played really well, or at least competitively, the first few games of the season. The last couple games, they've started to kind of, tail off. The offense isn't really playing that well. The defense is not really playing that well. So they have to find a way to right the ship. This may not be the game for them to do that, but they're averaging 13 points per game, giving up 31. They average 146 yards on the ground with 3.7 yards per carry. They're averaging 171 yards through the air with 8 touchdowns and 4 interceptions, giving them a total of 317 yards of offense with 4.9 yards per play. The opponents average 189 yards on the ground, 4.7 yards per carry, 260 through the air, 12 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and they average 450 yards per game with 6.7 yards per play. Palm Bluff's converting 31% on third down and 30% on fourth down. They fumbled 8 times and lost 7, giving them a total of 11 turnovers. The opponents have fumbled the ball 13 times and lost 6, along with their 3 interceptions, putting them at 9 turnovers, making Pine Bluff a -2. The opponents convert 42% on third down and only 12% on fourth down. So only 8 fourth down attempts for the opponents. So they're converting 42% on third down. So they're allowing drives to be extended. They can't get off the field. And when they do have the ball, they can't sustain drives. So, that's a recipe for disaster, especially in these last couple games. They have 14 sacks as a defense, but they've given up 23. And I thought this offensive line would be a strength on this team, but they really have had a rough go of it this season. They're 9 of 18 in the red zone with 7 touchdowns. The opponents 18 of 21 in the red zone with 15 touchdowns. Running back health is the issue. They've had 3 or 4 guys who played a lot. Jonas Davis still leads the team with 297 yards, averaging 5.1 yards per carry with 1 touchdown. Kirsten Rogers has 157 yards, 9.8 yards per carry. BJ Curry has 156 yards with 5.8 yards per carry. And Jalen Macon at quarterback has 119 yards, averaging 3.1 yards per carry. Speaking of quarterback, this team is like all of a sudden this team has went back to juggling quarterbacks. A couple of weeks ago, Coach Hampton said that Jalen Macon will be the quarterback moving forward. This week they played Chancellor Edwards, who hadn't played all season, and they played Macon and they played Higgins as well in that game. So you're 6 games into the season and now you're juggling quarterbacks again. That's a bad sign to me. Um, I thought Jalen Macon was playing well. He has 66% completion rate, 61 of 92 with 4 touchdowns and 1 interception with 634 yards. Your starter last week went 9 of 11 for 72 yards with 2 touchdowns and 1 interception. So his numbers are nowhere near as even if you average out Bacon's numbers, they average out to basically more than anything he's done. So I'm surprised that they're going that route. But we'll see. If they stick with one guy for the rest of the season, or they continue this, because that's kind of alarming to me at this portion of the season. Kenji Lewis has 18 catches for 265 yards, a 14.7 yard average with 2 touchdowns. Maurice Lloyd 15 for 167. 11 yard average with no touchdowns. Tristan Ballard, tight end, 11 catches for 129 yards, 11 yards per catch with 2 touchdowns. And they have a couple other guys with at least 6 or 7 catches, but they have to get some consistency on offense. They have to find a quarterback and stick with him and ride this thing out. You don't want to start to backtrack. I had a concern with this team that if they were to not pick up those wins, that they would kind of start to not buy in as much. And I'm looking at that now coming out of this Valley game. This game is very important. Win or loss, this game is very important. They have to get back to being competitive and putting themselves in opportunity to win. And they haven't done that the last 2 games they played. Rico Dozier has 74 tackles to lead the defense. Khalil Arnold has 6.5 tackles for loss, and he has 6 sacks to lead the defense in both categories. And their 3 interceptions are by 3 different guys. Jeremy Baker averages 39 yards per punt. Dean Saris is 2 of 7 on field goals. That's also a bad sign. You're blowing opportunities to get points when you get in scoring position. 28% on field goals, 2 of 2 from 20 to 29 yards, 0 of 4 from 30 to 39 yards, and 0 for 1 from 40 plus. Longer 25. So haven't really kicked any meaningful field goals. Kind of getting stalled out and missing field goals and getting them blocked. The punt return game, they only have 5 returns for 3 yards, so not a lot there for them. Maurice Lloyd has 14 kickoff returns for 333 yards with a long of 34, averaging 23.7 yards per return. They have some speed at the return positions, but they haven't really had an opportunity to make some things happen. So a game like this, like I said, this is Alcorn's game. Pine Bluff, they don't play the run well. They don't play the pass well. They're struggling to move the ball offensively. They're juggling quarterbacks. They seem to have the problems that I thought they would have early in the season. They're having them now. And that's a bad look playing against an Alcorn team with a very good defense, a defense that can turn you over, an offense that can pass the ball well now, and the potential to be a great running team. So I look for Alcorn to run the ball coming into this game, and it should pop for them. I think the Braves win this game 27-14. Pine Bluff, they still have, they have to go back to the drawing board and find some things that can work because, like I say, these last couple of games, they haven't looked as sharp as they did in previous games. They losing the line, so to speak. Our next game is Southern taking on Bethune-Cookman in Jacksonville. This game, Southern. We'll start with Southern. Southern's a team that some people look at them as an okay team. Some look at them as a bad team. Some people think Southern's still a good team, and I think Southern's somewhere in the middle. Talent-wise, they have the talent. Scheme and execution-wise, especially on offense, it's been up and down. The offense has been coming around the last few weeks. Not necessarily counting anything that happened in that Lincoln game because that's just a overmatched opponent. But in their last few conference games, they're starting to play better on offense. They're starting to score points, not at a high clip, but they're starting to score points. The running game has started to come around. The passing game is there, still inconsistent. Still some bad throws here and there. Still some lapses in the blocking schemes. But the offense, if it clicks, can be explosive. They just haven't been consistent. Defensively, this defense has been pretty solid. I mean, they have their moments where they may, give up a big play here or there, but they've been pretty solid. Southern, as an offense, is averaging 22 points per game. They're averaging 107 yards on the ground, averaging 3.3 yards per carry. Through the air, 251 yards passing, 9 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. 359 yards of offense per game, 5.7 yards per play. The opponents average 93 yards per game on the ground, 2.7 yards per carry, 192 yards through the air for the opponents, 7 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and 283 yards of offense for the opponents, 4.2 yards per play. So, like I said, the defense has been playing well. Third down is the defense's Achilles heel. They can be susceptible to drives from time to time because whether it's a penalty or just giving up a pass play, especially on third and longs, they've given that up quite often, and that hurts the third down percentage. The opponents are 6 of 15 on fourth down for 40%. Southern is 35% on third down, 27 of 77. Again, haven't been able to sustain drives, whether it's a missed pass or a penalty that sets you back and put you in third and long. Whatever it is, they can't get out of their own way on third downs on either side of the ball. 47% on fourth down. Southern's fumbled the ball 8 times, lost 6 with those 7 interceptions. That gives them 13. The opponents have fumbled 12 times and lost 8. And with those 3 interceptions they have, that's 11. So Southern's a -2, which that's gotten better week by week. But those untimely and careless turnovers are still kind of coming back to bite them. Now, one of the interceptions they threw, the 2 interceptions they threw Saturday, one was I think it was a late throw. It was behind the receiver, got tipped in the air, guy picked it off. The other one was late in the game, which it reserves in. So those 2 interceptions, shouldn't happen in most games, but they happen in this one. So that's why this team has 7 interceptions. They are 13 of 17 in the red zone, 8 touchdowns. The opponents are 9 of 13 in the red zone with 7 touchdowns. So they haven't really allowed teams to get in the red zone that often. They don't give up a lot of explosive plays on defense, but they give up the drives here and there. And so in most games, it hasn't really hurt, but in the losses, it's hurt. It's hurt quite a bit in their last 2 losses. Bama State didn't really drive the ball that much against Southern. They had one big pass play, and then they had a short field that they scored on a free play on an offside penalty. Southern had 16 sacks as a defense. They're giving up 19. The offensive line has been improving, but they still, like I said, they still have a few issues that's been plaguing them. Gary Qualls has come on strong the last few games. He has 348 yards, rushing 4.6 yards per carry with 3 touchdowns. Kendrick Grimes, 199 yards, 4.9 yards per carry with 2 touchdowns. Kobe Dillon and C.J. Russell are guys who have both kind of got some carries here and there. They both are at about 60 yards on the season. Harold Blood is 104 of 169 for 61%, 1,432 yards, 9 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. He's a guy who, he gets a lot of flack. Some of it's deserved, but he's been getting better week by week. He still has the occasional bad play. Sometimes he holds the ball too long, takes a sack. Maybe he should get rid of the ball on. But the offense in the passing game has gotten better since the start of the season. Chandler Whitfield has 11 catches for 186 yards, averaging 16 yards per catch with 1 touchdown. Kendrick Grimes, 17 catches for 168 yards and 2 touchdowns. You also have George Qualls with 12 catches. Jalen Howard has 9. August Pete has 7. And they've been able to hit the big play. They have a 64-yard pass, 72-yard pass, a 98-yard pass, 44 and 42 for long. So they hit explosive plays, especially through the air, not necessarily on the ground. The longest rush on the season is 34 yards, but they don't have the consistency, and that's what makes this offense look the way that it looks. Jalen Campbell leads the defense with 50 tackles. Uh, Kelby Gibbons has 11 tackles for loss to lead the team and 5 sacks to lead the team. Jordan Carter has 2 interceptions to lead the team. Special teams are very solid. Other than a couple of missed extra points against FAMU, the kicking game has been solid. They average 42 yards per punt, and they are 6 of 8 on field goals with a long of 42. 2 or 2 from 20 to 20, 2 to 2, 2 for 2 inside 20 yards, 1 for 2 from 20 to 29, and 3 for 3 from 40 to 49, 0 for 1 from 50 plus. The return game, they got a kickoff return for a touchdown last week. Jalen Howard with a 90-yard return. He has 3 returns for 120 yards to lead the team. Chandler Whitfield has 5 punt returns for 21-yard average. So they have the guys that can bust those plays. They just haven't really did it often, and that's been something that's kind of hurt them. But they haven't really given up a lot in the return game either, so it kind of evens out. Bethune-Cookman, their offense really got a nice burst last week, scoring 31 points, but they're averaging 18 per game, giving up 30 per game. They average 98 yards on the ground with a 2.8-yard average. They have had some quarterback issues, but they got Luke Sprague back last week. So that should help the passing game much more. On averaging 134 yards per game, 5 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, giving them a total offense of 233 on the season with 3.7 yards per play. The opponents are averaging 182 yards per game on the ground, 4.9 yards per carry, 227 through the air, 6 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Opponents 410 yards of offense with 6.1 yards per play. Bethune-Cookman is 31% on third down and 70% on fourth down. The opponents 30% on third down. Defense has been really solid on third down, but they've given up 66% on fourth down. So that kind of hurts them, allowing opponents to continue drives. They have 6 fumbles on 6 lost fumbles with 10 total, giving them 9 turnovers. The opponents have 5 fumbles with 3 lost fumbles with 4 interceptions, giving them 7 turnovers. So they are -2 in the turnover ratio. They have 8 sacks on the season, giving up 24. So protecting the quarterback has been a big issue. Pass rush hasn't really been there. Those are 2 things that can hurt you, especially in a game like this. If you can't protect the quarterback against a defense that likes to get to the quarterback, that can be a problem. They're 13 of 15 in the red zone with 12 touchdowns. Opponents 23 of 26 in the red zone with 16 touchdowns. Jimmy Robinson has come on strong the last couple of weeks. He has 237 yards rushing with 3.5 yards per carry with 2 touchdowns. This offense has not been explosive on the ground. The longest run is 25 yards. Their longest pass on the season is 40 yards. So they have not had very many explosive plays, and that's something that you really want to see improve. Luke Sprague is 43 of 64 for 67%, 385 yards, 3 touchdowns with 1 interception. Walter Simmons, 49 or 89, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, 55%, 376 yards. You can possibly see both of those guys play. I don't know if they really married to the idea of consistently playing 2 guys, or if one guy is going to take it. But Coach Woody did say you could possibly see both guys in this game. Tink Boyd leads the team with 16 catches for 166 yards with a 10-yard average with no touchdowns. Dakari Allen Johnson has 19 catches for 154 yards and 3 of their 5 touchdowns, excuse me. He's the guy who makes the plays for them and get the ball in the end zone. Davino Ellington has 15 catches for 150 yards with no touchdowns. Defensively, they're led in tackles by Darius Thomas with 54. He also has 7 tackles for loss. And Eddie Walls leads the defense with 2 sacks. Interceptions, they have 4 guys with 1 interception apiece. The special teams, they're averaging 38 yards per punt. They're 3 of 5 on field goals with a long of 45. They're 1 of 1 from 20 to 29 yards, 0 for 1 from 30 to 39 yards, and 2 for 3 from 40 to 49 yards. The return game, I mean, Darnell Dees is one of the best return guys in the league. He's averaging 28 yards per return with a long of 61. Allen Johnson averages 35 yards per return on 2 returns with 45 yards or so. They can bust the returns. If you're not careful, they can get points that way easily. Punt returns, they're only averaging 4 yards per punt return, but they're giving up 12 yards per punt return. That's something to look at. That's hidden yardage that can kill you in any game. You don't want to give up that much yardage on punt returns. But this game, like most games, I think it comes down to Southern. If the offense shows up and they play consistent, or at least as consistent as they can be, and they can run the ball against a defense that's giving up yardage on the ground and yardage through the air, and they don't have the stupid turnovers, I think Southern's going to win this game because I think the defense for Southern can definitely hold down Bethune-Cookman's offense. Um, There'll probably be that drive or two that Southern give up plays and a few points, but they've been really solid at responding to those issues. And the offense seems to be getting better every week, at least incrementally. I think Southern wins this game 24-13. It's not going to be pretty. I don't think Southern's capable of playing a pretty game. I don't think Bethune-Cookman is either. So it's not going to be pretty, but it's going to be a win for Southern. Although I do give Bethune-Cookman a good opportunity if they can turn Southern over, work a lot of short fields, and the return game can help them get that extra yardage to kind of move the ball down the field for them. Our final game, which is our game of the week, and speaking of ugly games, FAMU takes on Texas Southern. That's the last game of the day. That's a 7 o'clock kickoff on ESPN Plus. So these two teams, this game before the season was viewed as a serious game, maybe even a SWAC championship preview. With Texas Southern losing Andrew Body, the team has been kind of on a downslide, but they had a really good offensive game against Bethune-Cookman last week, so maybe that can kind of get them going. FAMU has been winning all of their games other than the USF game, and they've played a formula: bad first half, strong second half, and get the win. Win ugly and get the win. They're averaging 27 points per game. They're giving up 15. The Rattlers average 107 yards per game rushing with 4 yards per carry. They're 270 yards passing, 12 touchdowns with 6 interceptions, 378 yards of total offense with a 6-yard average per play. The defense is stout. That Dark Cloud defense is hard to move the ball against them. They're giving up 82 yards per game on the ground with a 2.4-yard average. And they allowed opponents to pass for 191 yards per game with 8 touchdowns and 2 interceptions with 274 yards of offense per game for the opponents and 4.2 yards per play. FAMU converts 40% on third down and 40% on fourth down. The opponents are 26% on third down and 50% on fourth down. FAMU has 5 fumbles and lost 4, giving them 10 turnovers. The opponents have nine fumbles and lost 4, giving them 6. So they're -4 in that aspect. That's been one thing that's kept a lot of games close. Is turnovers. They have 18 sacks of the defense, and they only give up 8. They protect Musa very well. They have probably the best offensive line in the conference, and they protect the quarterback extremely well. They are 15 of 20 in the red zone with 10 touchdowns. The opponents are 10 of 15 in the red zone with 7 touchdowns. The running game has not been as good as I thought it would be, and I don't know if it's that they're not using it a lot or the guys just aren't really producing, but they have the backs to run the ball. Terrell Jennings has 234 yards with a 5.3-yard average and 4 touchdowns. Jaquez Yant has 157 yards, a 3.8-yard average with 2 touchdowns. You also have Kelvin Dean with 152 yards and a 4.3-yard average. Jeremy Musa is 123 of 212 for 58%, 1,569 yards, 12 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. He hasn't had a great season, but he hasn't had a bad season either. He's been good. He's had his stretches where he's missed some passes, but I mean for the most part, he's very very solid at quarterback. Marcus Riley, 20 catches, 329 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Jamari Sharee, 26 catches, 275 yards, and a touchdown. Nicholas Dixon, 13 for 224 and 1 touchdown. And Kamari Young at tight end has 15 catches for 206 yards and a touchdown. Also, Jamari Gassett has 15 catches for 162 yards and 2 touchdowns. So they have a lot of guys that can make plays catching the ball, and they use them all. They are also not scared to use their tight end, and that's a thing that definitely helps them keep defenses off balance. Isaiah Major has 51 tackles to lead the defense. Anthony Dunn, who's had a really good season, has 9.5 tackles for loss to lead the defense. And he also has 6.5 sacks to lead the defense. Their interceptions, they only have a couple guys with one apiece. Special teams, solid as usual. Trey Wilholt averages 43 yards per punt. Cameron Gillis is 5 of 7 on field goals. 3 for 3 from 20 to 29 yards, 1 of 2 from 30 to 39 yards, 1 of 2 from 40 to 49 yards with a long of 44. He has had 2 kicks blocked, so that's something to kind of keep an eye out on. And the return game has been solid. Shareed averages 18 yards per punt return. Gassett averages 12 yards per punt return. And Marcus Riley averages 30 yards per kick return with a touchdown. So they have the guys that can make plays all over the field. They're facing a Texas Southern team who has been up and down. I mean, before last week, before the Lincoln game, and then this game, they hadn't scored 30 points, but the one time against Prairie View, they're averaging 25 points per game, 181 yards on the ground, 5.3 yards per carry. They have a really good backfield. Guys are very solid running the ball. 175 yards through the air, 8 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 356 total yards of offense with 5.9 yard per play average. Defensively, they have had their issues. They are giving up 40 points per game, and a lot of that is because those couple of FBS games really killed the average. They're giving up 194 yards per game on the ground, 4 yards per carry. The opponents are 227 yards through the air, 14 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. This was a defense that led the SWAC in interception last season. That just goes to show you that sometimes, turnovers don't always happen when you want them to. They haven't really been able to get a lot of turnovers, and that's hurt them in games. Opponents average 422 yards of offense and 5.6 yards per play. Texas Southern is 32% on third down, and they've only attempted 3 fourth downs, and they're 33% on that. The opponents 47% on third down and 60% on fourth down. 5 fumbles, and they've lost 4, giving them a total of 8 turnovers. The opponents have fumbled 5 times and lost 3, giving them 5 turnovers, so they are minus 3. They have 14 sacks as a defense. They're giving up 12, so the offensive line has played pretty well. They're 12 of 15 in the red zone with 8 touchdowns. The opponents 30 of 32 in the red zone with 27 touchdowns. So they've given up a lot of traffic in the red zone, man. Teams have been marching up and down the field and scoring when they do, and that's a problem. Ladarius Owens leads the team with 567 yards, averages 7.2 yards per carry, and 5 touchdowns. You also have Ja'Cory Howard with 44 carries for 229 yards and 3 touchdowns. Jace Wilson has been the quarterback since game 2. He's 62 of 117, 52% completion rate, 697 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 1 interception. Jaron Johnson has 25 catches for 225 yards and 2 touchdowns. Quay Davis, 16 for 195 and a touchdown. You also have A.J. Bennett with 8 for 134 and 3 touchdowns. Trenton Leary, 7 catches for 112 yards. Defensively, Jacob Williams is the straw that stirs the drink. He's one of the best linebackers in the conference. A lot of people don't really know his name, but he has 54 tackles to lead the team, 12.5 tackles for loss, and 5.5 sacks to lead the team in all those categories. Interceptions, they have 2 guys with 1 apiece. Special teams, they average 38 yards per punt. They have had 1 punt block. There are 7 of 11 on field goals, with a long of 41, 2 of 2 from 20 to 29 yards, 3 of 4 from 30 to 39 yards, 2 of 5 from 40 to 49 yards. The return game, Ladarius Owens was big in the Bethune-Cookman game. He had a huge return game that day. He's averaging 27 yards per kickoff return, and they're averaging 7 yards per return to lead the team. So this game, again, this is a FAMU type of game, man. I think the offense is probably going to start a little slow, but they're going to find their footing. Defense going to make it hard for TSU to move the ball. Coming off of a bye week, I do expect to see FAMU maybe be a bit more crisp. So maybe they won't have a slow start, but I think the Rattlers defense gets them through this game. I think they win 31-14. I think TSU just is going to have a hard time moving the ball against their defense, and the FAMU offense should be able to move the ball through the air and maybe even find a little success on the ground if that's what they're looking for. But I think the Rattlers win this game and continue their march toward the SWAC East Division Championship. Um, Taking a quick look at the standings before we get up out of here. FAMU leads the East at 4-0. They're 5-1 overall. Jackson State is 2-2, 4-3 overall. Bama A&M 2-2, 4-3 overall. Bama State 2-2, 3-3 overall. Valley 1-2, 1-5 overall, and Bethune-Cookman is 0-3 with a 1-5 overall record. So FAMU, they just have to keep winning. They keep winning. They're gonna probably officially clinch the division in about 2 or 3 weeks. As long as they keep winning, they'll be straight there. Prairie View leads the West at 3-1, 3-4 overall. Alcorn 2-1, 3-3 overall. Southern 2-1, 3-3 overall. Grambling 2-2, 3-4 overall. Texas Southern 1-2, 2-4 overall. And Pine Bluff is 0-3 with a 1-5 overall record. The West is anybody's game. Grambling, Prairie View, and Alcorn have all played each other. They all have to play Southern. So there's going to be a lot of room for movement. I mean, you can't count Texas Southern out. They may be able to find their stride. So the West is anybody's ball game. The East is FAMU. As long as they don't shoot themselves in the foot, they'll be fine. That's our Week 8 preview. We'll be back on Sunday to recap the action from Week 8. And tomorrow we have SWAC Smoke live, 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Eastern. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit the socials. And we'll catch y'all on the rebound. Peace.